Yashodanandana Brajanaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadhari Yashodanandana Brajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajanaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pavikajacharya Shota Shota Shishiman His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 10, text number 4. The chapter is entitled, what is it? I think Srimad Bhagavatam, let me see. So, Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. Okay, so do the word for word. So, stitihi, okay, great. Vaikunta, Vijaya, Poshanam, Tat, Anugraha, Manvantarani, Sat, Dharmaha, Utayaha, Karma, Vasanaha, Stitir Vaikunta Vijayaha, Poshanam Tad Anugraha, Manvantarani Sadharma, Utaya Karma Vasanaha, Stitir Vaikunta Vijaya, Poshanam Tad Anugraha, Manvantarani Sadharma, Utaya Karma Vasanaha, Stitir Vaikunta Vijaya, Poshanam Tad Anugraha, manvantarani saddharma uttaya karma vasanaha. Stitir Vaikunta Vijaya Oshanam Tadanugraha Manvantarani Santharma Utaya Karma Vasanaha Stitir Vaikunta Vijaya Oshanam Tadanugraha Manvantarani Sadharma Utana Vanshanaha Stitir Vaikunta Vijaya Poshanam Tad Anugraha Manvantarani Sadharma Taya Karma Vasanaha. Okay. Stitihi, the right situation. Vaikunta Vijaya, the victory of the Lord of Vaikunta. Poshanam, maintenance. Tad, anugraha, his causeless mercy. Manvantarani, the reign of the Manus. Sat, dharmaha, perfect occupational duty. Utayaha, impetus to work. Karma, vasanaha, desire for fruitive work. Okay, translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. The right situation for the living entity is to obey the laws of the Lord and thus be in perfect peace of mind under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Manus and their laws are meant to give right direction in life. The impetus for activity is the desire for fruitive work. Purport. This material world is created, maintained for some time, and again annihilated by the will of the Lord. The ingredients for creation and the subordinate creator, Brahma, are first created by Lord Vishnu in his first and second incarnations. The first Purusha incarnation is Mahavishnu, and the second Purusha incarnation is Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, from whom Brahma is created. The third Purusha avatar is Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, who lives as the supersoul of everything in the material universe and maintains the creation generated by Brahma. Shiva is one of the many sons of Brahma, and he annihilates the creation. Therefore, the original creator of the universe is Vishnu, and he is also the maintainer of the created beings by his causeless mercy. As such, it is the duty of all conditioned souls to acknowledge the victory of the Lord and thus become pure devotees and live peacefully in this world, where miseries and dangers are always in existence. The conditioned souls who take this material creation as the place for satisfaction of the senses and thus are illusioned by the external energy of Vishnu remain again to be subjected to the laws of material nature, creation and destruction. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that beginning from the topmost planet of this universe down to the lowest planet, Pataloka, all are destructible, and the conditioned souls may travel in space either by good or bad work or by modern spacecraft, but they are sure to die everywhere, although the duration of life in different planets is different. The only means to attain eternal life is to go back home, back to Godhead, where there is no more rebirth as in the material planets. The conditioned souls, being unaware of this very simple fact, because of forgetting their relationship with the Lord of Vaikunta, tried to plan out a permanent life in this material world. Being illusioned by the external energy, they thus become engaged in various types of economic and religious development, forgetting that they are meant for going back home, back to Godhead. This forgetfulness is so strong due to the influence of Maya that the conditioned souls do not at all want to go back to Godhead. By sense enjoyment, they become victims of birth and death repeatedly, and thus spoil human lives, which are chances for going back to Vishnu. The directive scriptures made by the Manus in different ages and millenniums are called Siddharma, good guidance for the human beings who should take advantage of all revealed scriptures for their own interests to make life successful termination. The creation is not false, but it is a temporary manifestation just to give a chance for the conditioned souls to go back to Godhead. The desire to go back to Godhead, the desire to go back to Godhead and functions performed in that direction form the right path of work. When such a regulative path is accepted, the Lord gives all protection to his devotees by his causeless mercy, while the non-devotees risk their own activities to blind themselves in a chain of fruitive reactions. The word Siddharma is significant in this connection. Siddharma, or duty performed for going back to Godhead and thus becoming his unalloyed devotee, is the only pious activity. All others may pretend to be pious, but actually they are not. It is for this reason only that the Lord advises in the Bhagavad Gita that one give up all so-called religious activities and completely engage in the devotional service of the Lord to become free from all anxieties due to the dangerous life of material existence. To work situated in Siddharma is the right direction of life. One's aim of life should be to go back home, back to Godhead, and not be subjected to repeated births and deaths in the material world by getting good or bad bodies for temporary existence. Herein lies the intelligence of human life, and one should desire the activities of life in that way. Om Agana Tamanandasya Gananjanjana Salakaya Chakshodam Yanthamina Tashmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swaram Rupakada Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shukta Parakamanam Shri Guru Vaishnamam Shra Shri Rupam Sagujatam Sahagana Raghunattam Mitam Tam Sharivam Savadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saritam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Badan Sahagana Naritam Shri Vishakam Mitam Shta Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimante Bhakti Vikas Swami Niti Namane Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimante Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunivadi Pashkata Dastarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, Sitir Vaikunta Vijaya Pushanam Taranugraha Manvantharari Saddharma Utaya Karma Vasana. So, let me see here. I just wanted to get one verse here ready for when I need to get to it. Okay. So, Sukadeva Goswami is explaining something. Anyways, I'll ask a couple questions and then we can see. But, so what is... In general, what's Sukadeva Goswami explaining or talking about? There could be many answers to that question, but I'm looking for a specific answer. And that's there. But he's explaining the right duty. But he's there's like a verse that he's like unpacking that he spoke earlier. That's like the key right there. No, not Sandharma. The first verse. So he explained like the 10 subjects of Srimad Bhagavatam. So yesterday he talked about Sarga and Visarga. So you see, like if you look at the verse from yesterday, let's see here. Bhuta Matindriya Diyam Janma Sarga. So Sarga. So that was the first part, right, where he's explaining, like all the senses and everything. They're manifest by Vishnu. I don't know if he said that exactly, but anyways, that's the understanding. And then Brahmano Guna Vashamyad Visarga Purushu Smritaha. And then so the secondary creation is Visarga is which is done by Brahma. So so previously in the first verse, he just mentioned all the subjects like briefly, Atra Sarga Visargam Shta. So he didn't really like explain. So now he's like explaining that a little bit, like what these different things mean. So in this verse, he mentions 4 actually. So this, stiti, poshanam, manvantarani, and then was this utayaha. And so those are there mentioned in the Sanskrit. And so that's what's, anyway, so that's kind of like what's going on in the Bhagavatam right now. So these next couple verses, he's going to explain those. The next one I think is, I'm not 100% sure. I can just look. But the next verse he'll explain is, I don't know actually by looking at it. Oh, Ishakata, so the science of God, and then Nirodha like that. So he's unpacking, the subject matters of Bhagavatam, and it's important. And I'll get to that at the end of the class, but the whole purport's making the point of Saddharma, which Prabhupada elaborates on a lot, which is that pretty much that one should be engaged in activities to go back home, back to Godhead. So and we'll read that in a little bit, but pretty much, the Bhagavatam is aiming at bringing us to the conclusion of the sunam bonum, the ashrayaha. So the supreme shelter. And so that supreme shelter is the supreme personality of Godhead. So all these different subject matters are meant to like bring us to that conclusion, and they all find their shelter in that also. And the thing is that, so, if we don't understand these different topics, then it can become sentiment that, we love Krishna, but then we don't really understand that, that he created everything, or he's the creator of Brahma, or things like that. And then what happens is that, Krishna's amazing, Krishna's great, but then like in India, then it's like, well, Krishna's, amazing, but Rama's better because like Krishna did immoral activities. And so, but there's no like understanding that, well, like Krishna doesn't do immoral activities. So then they like know all these things, but then they get like the basic point wrong, where they think that like Krishna is like sinful or something like that. So we have to understand all these things properly. And anyways, all these different intricacies tie into the Srimad Bhagavatam. So just going a little bit into the purport, just to explain a couple things. And let me pull up something here. Let me see where that's at. So I'm going to need this. I can't find it. Okay, here we go. So Prabhupada starts off the purport, and she talks about the material world is created, maintained, and destroyed by the will of the Lord. So there's different agents that do that, and there's different slokas that explain that. So the creation of the Lord is done by Vishnu. And there's different verses that explain that. So this is talking about Sarga, and I'm not going to get so much into that. But there's one verse in the Brahma, well, there's not one verse, but anyways, this verse in the Brahma Samhita talks about like kind of this point, which Prabhupada's making in the very first sentence. So I'll just read that. So Agnir Mahi Gaganam Anmumarud Dashascha Kalat Atapma Manasidi Jagat Trayani Yasmad Vivanti Vivanti Vishanti Yamcha Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So the translation is, the 3 worlds are composed of 9 elements: fire, earth, ether, water, air, direction, time, soul, and mind. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, from whom they originate, in whom they exist, and on whom they enter into the time of universal creation. So one important thing to like understand about like Sarga and Visarga, and I'll read the description about Sarga here in a minute also, in relation to Brahma. But the big difference between Sarga and Visarga is, because it kind of took me some time to understand. So Sarga is like, like the ingredients that are there in like creation of the universe. I'm kind of speaking just like in a vague way now. But they're the ingredients that are created for Brahma to create the universe. That's kind of like an easy way to understand it. That Brahma does like the secondary creation, but he doesn't create like the actual ingredients in and of himself. Just like exist in like different devotees painted all these different artworks and paintings. So they were given ingredients to like do that with. It wasn't that like a painter like creates like paints and like different colors like, and then take what creates like a paintbrush and the easel and all these different things. The painter doesn't create all that. That's already existing. He just utilizes those ingredients, and then he's inspired by, the Lord to create an artwork. So that's like the big difference there. And so anyways, this verse also, this is, let's see. So this is talking a little bit about Visarga. So, Bhasvan yatatma sakaleshu nijeshitejaha swiyam kriyat pratapiyat api tattva artra brahmaya esha dagananda vidana karta govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami. And then the translation for that is, I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, from whom the separated subjective portion Brahma receives his power for the regulation of the mundane world, just as the sun manifests some portion of his own light and all the effulgent gems that bear the names of Shurya Kanta. So that verse is explaining there that Brahma, he's creating he's empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to, organize the material world. And then he, what is it said here? He regulates it. So he's, the top manager in that sense. And Brahma is also the most purest living being, that he takes that post, whoever is the most purest at the time of the universe is created, or whoever has that karma. So continuing. So Prabhupada goes on to explain in the purport about the different Purusha avatars. And so just to refresh on that, so the first Purusha avatar that was mentioned, I believe, in the previous verse. So Yakaranavala Jale Badati Smam Yoga Nijam Ananda Jagananda Sharom Kupaha Andara Shaktim Avalam Paramasamurtim Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So one of the features of the first Purusha avatar Mahavishnu is that from his pores of his skin come unlimited universes like that, and he's laying in Yoga Nidra. And then also he glances at the material world, the pradhana, and then these are things I explained. I'm not going to get so much in detail, and I don't understand them 100%. But he glances at the material world, and then Shambhu, that glance agitates that, and then the living entities are placed into the material world. That's explained in the Brahma Samhita. And so, anyways, Mahavishnu has other features. There's so many things like that, and different ways of looking at Mahavishnu. And then we have Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. And so I'll just pull up another verse here about Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. Let's see here. So, okay. So this is from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, but anyway, there's so many different verses that like explain like the activities. If you want to pull it up, you can. But so Adi Leela, chapter 1, text 10. And then I'll go to 11 right after that. So there's so many, the thing is like, when we read and discuss, Srimad Bhagavatam and things like that, it's good to like refer to like the Shastra, which is like the spoken words of the Acharya, and like discuss on that basis. That point was being made some maybe weeks ago or about a month ago when one individual was wanted to cite so many different things that he thinks this and he thinks that, and like that may, if we're new to Krishna consciousness, like we may think so many things, and then that can be discussed. But definitely the Shastra should be quoted and referred to, especially during Srimad Bhagavatam class. We may refer to like some intellectual or something like that if it is in sync with Srimad Bhagavatam and Srila Prabhupada's teachings, but it's not like the topmost authority. That's something that whatever some, I don't know, something that Joe Biden said or Trump said or something like that. So, or whatever, anyways, there's so many things that could be said about that. So we accept Srimad Bhagavatam and the Acharyas as the top pramanam. So this verse, Yasyam sam sha shila garbhoda shai yanyamya jam loka sagat analam loka shrutika damadatus tam shinit janana ramam prapadye. So particularly the first part of this verse, so Krishnadas Kaviraj is offering his obeisances unto Nityananda Prabhu. And so he's explaining that, anyways, he's a Garbhodakashayi Vishnu is a part of him. But the point here is that, so Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, from him, the navel comes, and then that from that lotus, that's who's Brahma. And then Brahma, creates the universe. And then within that lotus also, that's coming from his navel. All the universes are, hanging out in there. They're stored in there, inside that navel. So that's Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. And then the next verse refers to Shirodakashayi Vishnu. So Yasyam Sam Sha Paramatma Kilanam Poshta Vishnur Batidugdagri Shayi Shoni Bharata Yet Kalashopyanantas Tamshinit Janana Raman Prapadye. And then, so one thing just about Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, he lays in the Garbo water, and he rests on Seshanaga, and that's at the bottom of the universe. And then show Shirodakashayi Vishnu, he rests on the ocean of milk. I think that's Dugdagri Shayi. I think that's mentioned. Oh no, that's just me. Yeah, I think that is. Prabhupada translated Shirodakashayi Vishnu, but I think that means like one who's laying on the ocean of milk. And then the translation for that is, I offer my respectful obeisances under the feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, whose secondary part is the Vishnu lying in the ocean of milk. That Shirodakashayi Vishnu is the super soul of all living entities and the maintainer of all the universes. Seshanaga is his further subpart. So that's Shirodakashayi Vishnu. So he's maintaining all living entities. And Prabhupada talks about that in the purport here, about that. So the third Purusha avatar. And so it's important to know these things and learn these things. And it can be a little bit difficult and tricky to remember these things, but we hear them over and over again, and then we remember. And then we understand these things, and then we understand that, that Krishna and his different, avatars and different forms and expansions, that he has different activities that he performs and different roles that he plays. And these things are important to know, because otherwise, because then we get confused, and then we have we may have the improper shastric understanding. If we think, for instance, that Garbhodakashayi Vishnu is doing the activities of Shirodakashayi Vishnu. So the Shastras clearly explain that there's a difference between their activities and what they do. Or we say that from Shirodakashayi Vishnu, from the navel, Brahma's coming, but that's not happening. There's just some confusion, but we should understand the Shastra properly. Otherwise, if we don't, then we'll explain it improperly, and then we have an improper understanding, and that's not conducive for Krishna consciousness. So we repeat these things, and then we understand them properly. And then there's other things that can be said. It's mentioned about Shiva in here and things like that. So the point in a couple of the points, but the Prabhupada in the first paragraph is just explaining about the material world and the functions of the different Purusha avatars, and then also of the Guna avatars. So that's being explained there. And then he kind of sums it up with the point that the conditions, so the point is the conditioned souls, they can either accept the Lord's supremacy, as is mentioned here in the translation, Vaikunta Vijaya, the victory of the Lord of Vaikuntha. They can accept his victory, and it's an interesting sentence actually. It is the duty of all conditioned souls to acknowledge the victory of the Lord and thus become pure devotees and live peacefully in this world. So accept the victory of the Lord and then become a pure devotee and live peacefully. And then he says in this world where miseries and dangers are always in existence. So that's intrinsic to material nature. And then he says, and then the inverse of that is that the conditioned souls, if you take this as a place for sense gratification, and then you're in the illusion, you get to exist eternally with the miseries and dangers in the material world, and then you're subjected to laws of material nature, creation and destruction. So this is what Prabhupada's making in the first paragraph. And so I'll refer to another verse here. So you can pull this up. This is Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila chapter 2, texts 91 to 92. And I read this verse yesterday, so I'm just going to read a little bit of that purport. So, yeah, there you go. And so I won't read through all of it, but it's just talking about the different subject matters of Bhagavatam. I'll read the last sentence of this, and then I'll read through some of the purport. So the 10th item is the shelter of all others. To distinguish this ultimate shelter from the other 9 subjects, the Mahajanas have described these 9 directly or indirectly through prayers or direct explanations. So another thing too is that when we read the prayers of great devotees, or we see them, we see that so much they talk about these different subject matters in Bhagavatam, and So we can see, like, anyways, we'll refer to some now. But then we see, like, if we read through Bhagavatam, we see they talk, the Lord is creating and maintaining the material worlds. Before creation, the Lord wasn't, nobody was existing, you were, and then you manifested, and then through that, everything came and things, and then, what are some other things here? So it's mentioned here, special favor, impetus for activity. So there's prayers there that you inspire everybody from within their heart to engage in different activities. Those are like different, and we look at the prayers of great devotees, and it's manifests differently. Like they use different words and things like that, but that kind of mood is there. And then description of the Lord's incarnations and stuff. So all these things are there. And then, but the main thing is that they always come to the point that, well, actually, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you're the ultimate, shelter. They don't, their conclusion isn't that, like the topmost is like, the creation by Brahma, the material world, or something like that. But they always come back to that point that, like, the Krishna is the ultimate shelter of everything. And then they offer their obeisances. What is this verse? Anyways, it's just like one verse, but what is this? Palaya payasita tu shukta shakti mukyebya shruti ganama panitam payudada hatva ditijam aktayadyo brahmasya avatanam tam aha akilamitum jimamina notosmi. So that's a prayer offered to Matsya Avatar, but the Satyavata Raj is offering his obeisances onto him, and he's explaining that pretty much that. He's offering his obeisances on him as a shelter, but he's saying that, that you protected the material worlds when they were flooded, and then you also saved Brahma. Because there's that Leela also, it's not mentioned in Bhagavatam extensively, but is mentioned in that prayer actually, just subtly, that that Brahma was protected by this demon. And that's mentioned in Laghu Bhagavatamrita. But anyways, we're not getting into Matsya Leela right now. So, but the point is that, he offers different prayers about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if you actually see through each one of them, he's saying that he accepts the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the Supreme Guru. And he's accepting his shelter. So anyways, just kind of to make that point, that the great devotees, the Mahajanas, that they always bring us to that point of the ultimate shelter, and then all these things are entwined within their prayers. So just to read a little bit through this purport, I'll read some of the things that are mentioned, the subject matters that are mentioned in Bhagavatam, because that's just what's under discussion now, and it's mentioned in the text also, and it's important to know. So the first one, this is just, Sarga. The first creation by Vishnu, the bringing forth of the 5 gross material elements, the 5 objects of sense perception, the 10 senses, the mind, the intelligence, the false ego, and the total material energy or universal form. So that was mentioned yesterday. And then 2, Visarga, the secondary creation or the work of Brahma in producing the moving and unmoving bodies in the universe, Brahmanda. And so that'll be discussed in the 3rd canto more extensively, this Visarga. And then continuing, so this is mentioned in the verse today. So Sthana, the maintenance of the universe by the personality of Godhead Vishnu. Vishnu's function is more important and his glory greater than Brahma's and Lord Shiva's. For although Brahma is the creator and Lord Shiva is the destroyer, Vishnu is the maintainer. So, and that's being mentioned here. What's a Stitir Vaikunta Vijaya. So, and there's different ways of understanding that. It's actually really amazing, actually. So, Vaikunta Vijaya. And Prabhupada makes the point here that, and I'll just read that again. So, it is the duty of all conditioned souls to acknowledge the victory of the Lord and thus become pure devotees and live peacefully in this world. So, Prabhupada, if you look at the word for word, so the right situation is for devotees to accept the victory of Vaikuntanath, of the Lord of Vaikuntha, of Vishnu. And so that's the only way in which one can attain peace. And then we can trace that too back to the Bhagavad Gita. Anybody can think of a verse that explains that? If you want to be peaceful, what's the formula? There's a hint there. Probably it's called the peace formula. Yeah. Get Tamam Samtimrichiti. So, and that's kind of, though it's not explicitly mentioned like in the word for word, it's probably sometimes the acharyas, there's a word for that, I don't remember, but they explain more things by bringing out their translation, different like angles of looking at the verse. But automatically, I mean, if we accept the the supreme rule of the Lord of Vaikuntha. Vaikuntha means a place where no anxiety. So if a king is ruling a kingdom, the kingdom of Vaikuntha, where there's no anxiety, and then he rules over you, he conquers you, then you become, You can become subjected to the sovereignty of the kingdom of Vaikuntha. So we definitely want our minds to be conquered by Vaikuntanath, by the Lord of Vaikuntha. And so we could think if we're disturbed in mind or whatever it is, it's because we haven't surrendered to the Lord of Vaikuntha, to Vishnu. And then so if we're not surrendered to Vaikuntha, then we'll be surrendered to, what is this? You can pull up this verse here, 7th canto, chapter 9, text 39. So if we don't surrender to Vaikuntanath, this will be our situation, actually. And it's very nice, actually. So 7, 9, 39. And so this explains I'm pretty sure that's it. Let me see the Sanskrit. Yeah, so nine tan manastava katasu Vaikunthanatha sam priyate durita dushtam asaru tivram kamanturam harshasuka bayashanantaram tasmin katam tavagatim vimrashami dinaha. And then you can see go to the word for word. Sorry, I'm a word for word kind of guy. So here's Prabhupada mentions Vaikuntanath. And then Prabhupada translates that as, O Lord of Vaikuntha, where there is no anxiety. So you can go down to the translation. So Prahlad Maharaj is praying, my dear Lord of the Vaikuntha planets, where there is no anxiety. So in Vaikuntha there's no anxiety. But then he's explaining for our benefit, this isn't Prahlad Maharaj, but, because sometimes, we need great acharyas to help us realize what our situation is, because we forget. My mind is extremely sinful and lusty, being sometimes so-called happy and sometimes so-called distressed. My mind is full of lamentation and fear, and it always seeks more and more money. It thus has become most polluted and is never satisfied in topics concerning you. I'm therefore most fallen and sinful. In such a status of life, how should I be able to discuss your activities? So anyways, I won't go through the purport, but the point here is that, that Prahlad Maharaj is emphasizing the nature of a mind that isn't conquered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So anyways, it's just giving different angles of just like understanding some of these words here and how Prabhupada explains them. But that's what we want. We want Vishnu to conquer us. And Vishnu is going to conquer everybody anyways. And if we look at the Bhagavatam of personalities who, try to stand up against the rule of Vishnu, we have Haranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. So Haranyaksha, he was, he was running around the universe just causing trouble. And so he was fighting, he picked a fight with Varuna and things like that. And then he picked a fight with Varaha Dev. And so he was ultimately killed. And so in his situation, we could say, well, he wasn't in anxiety, this and that. But he was conquering, and he was trying, and when he became in anxiety when he came against Vishnu, because Vishnu ultimately killed him. And then Hiranyakashipu, same thing. He didn't want to. He was what's it called? He was trying to kill Vishnu. Anyways, it's funny, but the acharyas mentioned that the Lord, I'd have to look at it exactly, but anyways, Vishnu entered into Hiranyaksha. And then he was thinking he ran away from him in fear, but he did that to pacify him for that time. But anyways, so Hiranyakashipu, he was in anxiety about his son. So as long as we don't take shelter of the personality of Godhead, we'll be in anxiety. So anyways, continuing. So this, you can go back to the other verse. You know how to do that quickly? You just hit that back, the arrow? Yeah, so number 4. Anyway, so many things can be enumerated about all these things. You can have a whole class about Vaikuntha Vijaya. But anyway, some things for us to remember and then to think about. So 4th, so Poshana, special care and protection for devotees by the Lord. As a king maintains his kingdom and subjects, but nevertheless gives special attention to the members of his family, so the personality of Godhead gives special care to his devotees who are souls completely surrendered onto him. So anyways, we'll just kind of like carry on with the Vaikuntha Vijaya. So if we accept the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so we'll become peaceful. And then we'll get special care and protection. Just like, in the United States of America, like, if somebody comes in here on with like guns and like, threatens to kill us and we call the police will come and protect us. But if we're in South America and we call the police in America and like, please help, they're going to be like, well, you're not, you're out of our jurisdiction. We don't, we give protection to those that are within the state, that are, following our rules, that, are, contributing to society, all these different things, because those individuals that live in that state, they've taken shelter of the state, the rules and regulations, and follow the laws. Just like whatever, if someone's a criminal even within the state, but then they get some protection of the state, but not full things. They're not allowed to roam freely and all these different things. But a natural law-abiding citizen gets special protection. So the same thing. So if we accept the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we get protection. We get special care and special mercy, which isn't given to, it's available for everybody, but not everybody's taking that. And Prabhupada makes this point in the purport, just reading the same sentence again, so those that they don't accept the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then they take the material world as a place of satisfaction of the senses, and then they're an illusion. And then as a result of that, okay, if you want to do that, then, you're subject to, the laws of the material world, and then, birth, death, old age, and disease. And Prabhupada makes the point, he opens up in the next paragraph. He says, in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, from the topmost planets down to the lowest planet are all destructible, and then conditioned souls, they can travel in there by their karma, their good, after life, the good and bad activities, or by spacecraft. But anyways, we don't really see people traveling around so much. But yogis and things like that, they would travel to different planets. They could do that. We're trying to do that by modern, spacecraft and all these things, but we're not so successful. But anyways, there's these big pushes, going to Mars, getting land in space. So anyways, we'll see what they do with all that. But even if they do that, they're still going to die. And then this verse in the Bhagavad Gita was this, Abrahma Bhavana Loka Punar Arvatina Arjuna. That's the verse, right? No, is that it? I think I'm mixed. Yeah, is that the Abrahma Bhavana Loka? I feel like I'm mixed. Punar Arvatina Arjuna. That's the next line. Okay. Sorry, I thought I was messing it up. Okay, so anyway, so that's there. Abrahma Bhavana Loka. So from top down to the lowest are all places of misery where repeated birth and death take place. Punar Arvatina Arjuna. So this is but if we accept accepting the care and protection probably makes a point in the purport, which we'll get to a little bit later, or maybe we won't. But Saddharma, so good guidance. And so that instructions, he's specifically making the point here that comes from Manu, but it also comes from Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, from our acharyas. But anyways, we understand what is from the Bhagavad Gita was this Imam Vishvate Yogam Proktavan Aham Avayam Vivaswan Manave. So Vivaswan Manu Manave Prahur Manu Ishwaku Pravit, and then Manu spoke that to Ishwaku, and then so the parampara was established. So Evam Parampara Praptam. We understand, so the knowledge comes into cyclic succession. And so that was from one king to another. So the kings knew that knowledge, and then also, there's the acharyas, saintly devotees, they understood that, and then they passed it down. And so we get that knowledge from the guru, from the acharyas. And then so it says here, when such a regulated path is accepted, the Lord gives all protection to his devotees by his causeless mercy. And then Prabhupada makes that point so Poshanam Tad Anugraha. So Poshanam, we're discussing here, it means, maintenance, special care, protection. And then Tad Anugraha means his causeless mercy. So a king is protecting, and he's maintaining the citizens, and he's maintaining everybody, but it's by his mercy, for the lack of a better word. And Krishna is maintaining us in so many ways through his different agencies. Just like without his mercy or his sanction, the rain will not fall. And there will be drought and so many things, and people will starve. So so Krishna is maintaining the living entities, directly and indirectly. Directly, he's maintaining his devotees, and indirectly, all the conditioned souls are being maintained through the agency of the demigods of the material nature in that way. So So here, so Prabhupada makes up. So, anyways, kind of continuing with that. So, if we accept the instructions given by Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, we'll be protected. And then that's also mentioned in the. I don't know if I'll remember it exactly, but I think it's in Canto 1, Chapter 9, Text 12, that Prabhupada makes the point. Let me see. Yeah, Prabhupada makes the point, and I'll just read just a sentence from that. You don't have to pull it up. But Prabhupada says that as long as a person is fully in cooperation with the wishes of the Lord, guided by bona fide brahmanas and Vaishnavas, and strictly following religious principles, no one has cause for despondency, however trying the circumstances of life. And so, as long as we're following all the verdicts of Shastra and everything, we'll be protected. And we'll also, too, with that protection, we're following the rules, and then we'll be inspired by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to execute His instructions. So, kind of continuing. So, let's see here. So, in this thing, the fifth one, in the verse, it comes as like the sixth point being made. So, anyways, I'm going to go just to the Manvantars just for the sake of the verse here. So, Manvantars, the periods controlled by the Manus who teach regulative principles for living beings who desire to achieve perfection in human life. The rules of Manu, as described in the Manu Samhita, guide the way to such perfection. So Prabhupada talks about that in the purport. And so he references in the purport that the directive scriptures made by the Manus in different ages and millenniums are called Set Dharma, good guidance for the human beings, who should take advantage of all revealed scriptures for their interests to make life successful termination. So it's the same thing being made here, the point in this purport, of course. And so we can understand, and so let's see here. And then also, and then Prabhupada makes a point here. So Manvantaradi Set Dharma. And so Set Dharma, perfect occupational duty. So the Manus, ultimately, they're teaching, pure devotional service. And so they have these different books here, the Manu Samhita. So sometimes that's like, there's some discussion like in our society if we should accept that or not accept that or whatever. I haven't looked at in detail. Prabhupada would reference it, different verses he would make from that. But we can understand that we should accept that, and with the understanding that these rules and regulations given in the Madhu Samhita are meant to guide us to the highest perfection, to Sat Dharma. Because we're not interested in just performing, just Dharma just for the sake of karma, for sense gratification, and to achieve a good place in this material world and like that, and to make money. We accept the Dharma and the highest sense of what is pleasing to Krishna and what is displeasing to Krishna on those grounds. These different things are coming to mind, but I don't know where they're coming from. But let me see here for a second. I was reading some purport. Oh, it's probably in the what's it called, in the introduction to the Chaitanya Charitamrita. But Prabhupada was making the point that Krishna is saying, what is this? It's on the tip of my tongue. Sarva dharma parityajya mame kam sharanam vraja. So he's saying, abandon all varieties of religion. So Prabhupada was making the point that he's saying, abandon all this dharma. I don't know if he's saying it here. Anyways, But anyways, the point is, maybe he is saying it here. But he's saying that you abandon all this different dharma, but in the sense that you abandon all the dharma which is unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. So we accept dharma which is favorable to Krishna consciousness. Not that we just go out in the streets and just do whatever, and this because we're surrendered unto Krishna. So we reject that dharma which is unfavorable to Krishna. Just like, for instance, there's different things that are there in Vedic culture. But, if we don't worship demigods and things like that, there's room for that within the Vedic paradigm. But we don't do that because it's not favorable for devotional service. Now, there's a big discussion of that. We see that the gopis, they worshipped like that. But they didn't worship like a demigod in that sense. They worshipped the acharyas make the point there. Anyways, I have to reference that exactly to get all the details. Or if Mahotsa is listening, he can comment at the end of the class. But anyways, we the point is that we execute those activities which are favorable to Krishna consciousness. That's the point there. And Prabhupada makes the point in this purport also that about piety, and I'll just read that also. But he says that, so pretty much takes the point. So said dharma, so making the duties for going back home, back to Godhead, that's the main duty of the living entity, and that's the only pious activity. All others may pretend to be pious, but actually they are not. So someone may be like very honest, like I've never told a lie, I'm very pious, But then the thing is that if you need to lie for Krishna and you don't lie, then it's not pious, it's impious. Just like whatever, back in the day when the devotees were distributing behind the Iron Curtain, it was illegal to do that. They were risking their lives, and some devotees got killed for that, actually. So if they were back there, and then some of the KGB came, and then they were like, are you distributing books? And then the devotee's like, why? Well, I'm never going to tell a lie. So we're distributing books, and then this is where all the centers are, and this is where all the devotees are, and this is how we bring the books into the country, and this is where we're distributing the books and all that. And then that guy goes and kills all the devotees, but then it's like, well, I told the truth. You should have lied to protect Krishna's devotees. It's like, anyways, that didn't happen, but I'm just making the point that about we may sometimes an individual may place emphasis on, mundane piety. But like Srila Prabhupada is saying in the purport, that is that's just a pretense of piety is actually not pious. And then different things like that, we may, feed the poor, and, give homeless shelters, and then remove cataracts out of people's eyes, But it's we may remove that out of somebody's eyes, but it's mundane piety. It has nothing to do with Krishna consciousness. So real piety is preaching and spreading Krishna consciousness. That's, we have to really understand that point, and we have to accept that, because we may be put in a situation sometimes where weird situations, and we need to understand what the verdict is of Shastra and what our acharyas have said, because we don't want to, in the name of Krishna consciousness, feeding homeless people and not dressed as devotees and taking off our tilak. It's like some undercover thing. There may be room for undercover things, but it's when there's an opportunity to directly preach Krishna consciousness and spread Krishna consciousness, we should definitely do that first, because that's what Srila Prabhupada did. There may be covert operations and undercover things, and that's there. But if we can do it openly, we should do it openly. And if it's a little bit difficult to do it openly, we should try to also. There's if there's a spot and we can distribute books in Dodi and Kurta, it's best to if we can. If we can't do that, then then don't do that. It depends on what we're doing and the things, but we should try to do that, because there's a lot of reasons for that. But the main reason is that, I'm kind of getting on a different subject now, but anyways, the main reason we should do that, be openly Krishna conscious, is that it's good for us and it's good for other people, and they understand what we stand for. So going back to the other thing is that, if we don't understand these things properly, then we may, in the name of Krishna consciousness, be drifted into other things. And then it's then it's we're selling paintings about dogs, and talking about dogs. And anyways, that happened at one point. Devotees were selling paintings, which is fine if someone needs to maintain their household or something like that. But as a main temple activity, it's not okay. A temple is a place for people to come, and they should be engaged in direct devotional service, not selling paintings about dogs. So anyways, devotees were selling paintings about dogs, talking about dogs, and then in order to sell paintings, one devotee was telling me, he's flirting with rich old women. So what's spiritual about that? If you're flirting with old women day in and day out. So the point is that if we're not engaged in directly Krishna conscious activities, then we can lose enthusiasm in Krishna consciousness. And so we should be aware of that and always strive to be engaged directly in the Supreme Personality of Godhead's service under his bona fide representatives. So we should understand these things. And so it's Saddharma. And so the duty of the acharyas is to establish that you engage directly in Krishna consciousness. And so we may not understand the Manu Samhita and study all those things, but there are devotees that do that. And then they explain how we can apply those in our lives. The sadhus, then the brahmanas, the brahmana, real brahmana, who is absorbed in Brahman, who is absorbed in the Sat. So, Krishna. So anyway, just want to make that clear. So Brahmana, he's absorbed in all these different things, and so he can explain it to us. Because sometimes it's brought up, well, this devotee says that, and this devotee says that, but how do you know this, that, and the other thing? But all those things may be there, but one who is an actual pure devotee and who's understanding the Shastra and absorbing that, we should accept his verdict. Who is actually a devotee, just like Srila Prabhupada, for instance. Just like I was listening, yesterday, His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Maharaj was saying that he knows who a pure devotee is. There's no doubt in his mind that it's Srila Prabhupada. It's not. There's no he knows that, so he follows Srila Prabhupada, and there's no there's no filter. That's the point. Should I accept this? Should I not accept this? Is he right? Is he not right? It's like he's accepted it. It's bus as the end of discussion. So those who are like Srila Prabhupada and those who are following Srila Prabhupada, we don't need to have with mental blocks and question like that. Just like there was one bogus teacher, he was saying, you question everything, believe nothing. That was one of his famous mantras. Probably, what's his name? Ali Krishna will remember. And so he would say, question everything, believe nothing. And then one disciple, I don't know if a disciple asked him or he said it himself, but then the point was brought that you should even question what I'm saying as your guru, and you shouldn't believe it. So is nonsense. So the point I'm trying to make is that when we come in contact with the bona fide guru and the bona fide Shiksha gurus, those are manifestations of Lord Chaitanya's mercy. Krishnadas Kaviraj makes this point in the beginning of his Chaitanya Charitamrita, whenever you read it or get the chance to. So he opens up that, what's that? Vande Gurun Isha Bhaktam Ishar Ishavatarikam. So Vande Gurun, so you have the guru, and then you have the gurus, which are those devotees that help us in the path of Krishna consciousness, and they manifest in different ways. So that's Krishna's mercy also. And so those devotees are meant to come and teach us this Sad Dharma, which is instructions which we can go back home, back to Godhead. And they also, too, instill in us, so we have that aim to go back home, back to Godhead. Because Prabhupada says here that one's aim of life should be to go back home, back to Godhead, and not be subjected to repeated births and deaths in the material world. So one aspect of the Bhagavatam class is that, we're all trying to convince ourselves, myself included, of going back home, back to Godhead. Because sometimes, we get fired up about it, and then, 10 years, 20 years go on, and then kind of we forget. We join Krishna consciousness, we're all fired up, and material world sucks, and karmi life sucks, and this sucks, that sucks, and Krishna consciousness is the best. And then 20 years later, it's fast forward, and then it's karmis aren't really that bad. They're good people. Just I had one guy telling me in Berkeley one year, Srila Prabhupada said these things, anyways, I don't even want to say what he said. Prabhupada said this, that, and the other thing about people, but you should understand, well, anyways, I guess we'll say it. But he was saying, that Prabhupada and the Shastra says that, people are like hogs, dogs, camels, and asses. But there's some nice karmis out there too. And they may be nice, but the thing is that, Srila Prabhupada is making the point here, that is a pretense of piety, that they're actually not pious. We may be respectful to those people and nice. It's not that if somebody comes and, they're very nice person or whatever, we're going to be you're a freaking hog, just Janananda Maharaj was making that point. He was joking that when they first started preaching in Malaysia, some guy, I forget what he was saying, but he was making the point. And he was asking, he was I got a question. He was question for you. He's do you eat meat? And the guy was yeah, I eat meat. He's doesn't know, it's just some regular karmi. He's you're better than a hog. You're a freaking hog. You eat meat. So it was just anyways, we can't preach like that, time, place, and circumstance, anything goes. But anyway, we can like get heavy like that. But the point is we may, if someone says they eat meat, then we may explain, okay, well, it's not the best thing. And we may be nice, Prabhupada would say it's a sophisticated animal society. So we may use big words and come to the conclusion that, you're a sophisticated animal, sir. And Prabhupada would quote that verse also. That I don't know the Sanskrit, but taking straw between the teeth, imploring someone that, please forget all those different things you've learned and just please hear the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, but that's there also. And generally that should be the mood. But sometimes we may need to like speak sharply to some people and tell someone, hey man, like, you got these photos of all this guy on your wall, but he's freaking bogus. And then like really clearly explain it. So those things are there. And so so the teachers and the acharyas, they explain in that way. So then that's a manifestation of the mercy. So Lord Chaitanya's mercy comes through the devotees, and they help cut our attachment so we can understand things properly. And so that's the thing, that people, they may be, so-called pious, but we should understand things in truth as they are according to the verdict of Shastra. We always have to come back to the verdict of Shastra, to the instructions given to our by our spiritual master, and then the actual saintly devotees. And then the last thing mentioned here, so there's utti, this urge, so I'll just read that. So the urge for creation or initiative power, that is the cause of all inventions, according to the necessity of time, space, and objects. And so Prabhupada here, so Sukadeva Goswami, so uttaya karma vasanaha. So the impetus for activity is desire for fruitive work. So the Prabhupada, there's a couple of things that could be said about that. So this thinking, feeling, and willing, Prabhupada makes that point in the Bhagavad Gita. I forget where exactly. But it's in the 18th chapter, I know, I forget exactly which verse. But, so the point is that there's an impetus for work, but we don't want to engage in fruitive work, because everybody's inspired to work in a particular way according to their past activities. And Prabhupada talks about that thing in the purport. I may not be able to find it right off the bat exactly. But the point is that that the living entity, due to being covered over in not getting proper guidance, well, he may get proper guidance, but the thing is that there's material desires in the heart, so there's that impetus to engage in fruitive work, to obtain something. But Prabhupada makes the point that one becomes bound up in that way, in this karma vasana, this desire for fruitive work. So we don't want to be bound up in fruitive work. We want to be bound up in devotional service, because generally when we refer to karma bandhana, or what is this? What's the term for conditioned soul? Nityabadha, I think. He's bound up, eternally bound up. So Madhvacharya makes the point that there's Nityabadha, and then there's only, I forget exactly how he says it. Anyways, but he makes the point that I forget the Sanskrit words, that's the important part. It may be Nityamukta. But he makes the point that there's only one, what's it called? There's only one eternally liberated soul, which is Krishna, and then everybody else is bound. But either you're bound to the material world or you're bound to Krishna. He makes that point in that sense. So we want to be bound to the Vaishnavas, to Guru, and to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's where we want to be bound up. And if we're entangled in that way, and then we're given that the potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and He inspires us to do different things in His service, then we're blissful and we're happy. And so all of these things can only come if we accept the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, if we accept His ruling over our minds, over our intelligence, over our complete selves. If we throw ourselves Atman Nivedanam, fully surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we don't do those things, if we reject His supremacy, then, whatever, we may be, maintained we'll be maintained, Krishna will maintain us indirectly, and, we'll be protected. There's the cops and, our mom and dad, and then there's our bank balance. We'll be protected by that. And then there's rules for society. So yeah, we'll follow those. Dharma, maybe we'll go to the heavenly planets, maybe not. And then we'll be inspired to work for fruitive activity. So all these things will come. But if we accept the supremacy of Krishna, then He'll protect us directly. And then we see that in the Bhagavatam, just like He protected Maharaj Ambarish, just like He inspired, the different devotees. There's so many ways that devotees are inspired to recite prayers, to engage in His service, to do different activities. We can reflect on these things so much. And then the Manvantars, how they establish proper dharma and things like that. So the point is that we should accept the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and be happy. And so, anyways, I had some other thoughts, but I'll just stop there because anyways, time and things like that. But I guess one last point, just so Prabhupada makes a point. So the main thing is that, so we accept that, but we have to develop up the main aim is that, the aim is to go back home, back to Godhead. That's the main aim, to engage in Krishna service, to keep him, the focus on that, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, and then develop that desire to go back home, back to Godhead. So anyways, a couple thoughts there, if anybody has any questions or comments about anything. So, yeah. Huh? You want to get that little thing? It's right there. I don't know if anybody's listening, but just in case.
I guess this is comment / clarification.
Yeah.
Because you touched on like mundane piety.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I was recently talking to a family member of mine who's, they were talking about essentially like with me being here, the importance of me essentially like holding on to my good values that I was like supposedly raised up on,
Yeah.
and not getting like dragged away by being here. And I'm like, the understanding doesn't seem to. I mean, they also talked about me being dragged into Satan's clutches and whatnot as well.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is of course, it seems like with their point of view and whatnot, I guess like their idea of like piety, like good values, it's like, I guess for clarification, I brought that up because I wanted to understand like clearly mundane piety versus true piety. So you said that which is like true is that which is conducive to Krishna consciousness or spreading that, and mundane is just like essentially what, like just that, like just doing things for the sake of doing, like being truthful just for the sake of being truthful.
Yeah.
Or,
So general piety is like being truthful. Just like respecting elders. If someone's hungry, giving them food, giving charity, kind of like stuff like that. So that's like mundane piety. If doing those things, like you get good karma, and then you may go to the heavenly planets if you perform certain like Vedic sacrifices or whatever. If you're a good person in this life, then you'll be in a good position next life, like generally speaking. So like things like that are like good. Anyways, it could I'm speaking mainly on like the verdict of like, it should be on Shastra, because what something in society may be seen as good, like you can get, like if you get an abortion, that's like considered as like good, according to some people, but it's not good according to Shastra. But anyways, so things like that, like that's considered like good, but the thing is that it's good, but in and of themselves, it's not the supreme good. You're not going to go back home, back to Godhead from like being like, just like honest and truthful and like being an atheist, because there are atheists that are like that. So, but the thing is that we have to come to the platform of Krishna consciousness, because only in Krishna consciousness can we transcend like this karma, because that's the whole thing. There's karma and vikarma. And then we perform activities that are akarma. They're not because they're not karmic in the sense that they don't produce activities that are binding in this material world. So going back on that, so we may join Krishna consciousness, and we may have values or whatever, like been brought up in a certain way. And some of those things may actually be good. Like if, whatever, we were raised to like respect like seniors, that's good. That's good in Krishna consciousness. If we were raised to, speak, in a nice, kind way to like seniors or whatever, that's good. Just like back in the day, like, they would teach like women to like speak sweetly to their husbands. That's helpful. If your husband's a devotee and he's 100% engaged in Krishna consciousness, and then you speak nicely to him, that's conducive. But so the point that I'm making here is but then we also have to assess and see like, well, if we grow up and then like, we grew up disrespecting seniors and just like talking, whatever, using foul language, that's not conducive for Krishna consciousness. So we have to assess and see what's good and what's not good. But the thing is that all those things in and of themselves are just zeros. But when you add Krishna consciousness, it's one. But the thing is, someone may be like, a thief and bad talking and just have no manners or whatever, just completely uncultured, like, whatever, like, a malecha like myself. But if an individual, if that person comes to Krishna consciousness or in the association of devotees, even though he may be like the most sinful of sinners, by the engagement of Krishna consciousness, then all those different zeros, that person becomes like a one. Versus someone that, may be like, the nicest person with all these great qualities, but he's an atheist. And so Bhakti Vikas Maharaj is making that point, that there's a dog that was living in Puri as better than like the best birth in America, because that dog can hear like, whatever, the holy name. So we should like understand it in that sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So turn deep. I don't know if you had anything, Ali, sorry.
Prabhu, you mentioned several things. Thank you. I have a clarification question. Is Manvantras, there are 14 Manvantras.
Yeah.
Is it 14 Manvantras in the day of Brahma?
Yeah, I think there's a day.
It's
I
day of
forget.
Brahma.
Because, that's like a question always. I'm pretty sure it's 14 in a day. I don't think it's like 14 in a day, like, and 14 at night. You can see it's like another technical thing, but I'm pretty sure it's 14.
Okay.
Yeah, total.
That's all.
I forget all the numbers and everything. Yet to see. I could be wrong.
Is there anything from the Florida team?
I don't think so.
Prabhu, I have a question. You were discussing accepting Krishna's supremacy.
Yeah.
Is there a practical way to do that? Because it almost seems like it's some like high, like mystical, like magical realm that one has to
Yeah.
like enter into to like be, empowered or like inspired by Krishna,
Yeah.
I mean, it's desired, but it almost seems like, wow, like, Krishna can inspire me to do service in a certain way. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's, it seems difficult.
Yeah. So, like, the practical way that we accept, like, Krishna's supremacy is, what's this? I don't know the Sanskrit, but, anyways, whoever knows the first line of Maharaj Ambarish's prayers. Anybody know that? You know that, right? The first line of Maharaj Ambarish's prayers? Buddha out of India. Yeah, thank you. So he makes that point that, like, engaging the mind, like, on the lotus feet of Krishna. So that's, like, one practical thing. And then also, like, we're reading, Bhagavatam, we're discussing, we're taking prasadam, we're engaging in all these. So, like, we're engaging our senses. So Hrishikesh and Hrishikesh, I'm saving Bhakti Uchate. So we're engaging our senses in Hrishikesh, the master of the senses, Hrishi Isha. So, like, when we do, so that's like a practical way. So then so we're not engaging our senses in sense gratification. And then whatever, we have a particular service, whatever, book distribution, we go out and we distribute books, that's for Krishna's pleasure. And then we see, we've all seen, you go on book distribution, and then you're inspired in different ways, like stop somebody or whatever, or you're super enthusiastic. So then enthusiasm isn't on the mundane platform, like you get out there and like, yeah, I'm making money. That's how people go out there and they get like fired up about that, But it's not like a mundane salesman, because then it's like, whatever. Someone gives $1,000, but it doesn't go in our pocket. It goes in Krishna's pocket. So when we go out there on book distribution, just to kind of make that point, so how we're inspired by Krishna. So we go out there and then like we get all fired up, we're enthusiastic, and then like, some random person comes out of nowhere with some random shirt on, and then we're just like, oh my God, like that shirt you're wearing, and then we know everything, and then we like get into details of it, and then they come over, and then we have like a conversation, interact with them, and then like, just like different things are said, and then that person catches up on like that enthusiasm and that inspiration, which is like coming from Krishna, which is spiritual enthusiasm and inspiration. And so they pick up on that, and then they buy the books. And so like different, there's no formula for book distribution, you say like this line, and then they say that line, and then you say this line, and then you sell the book. Because you may say this line, and the person may say something completely crazy, like whatever. Well, you look like an amazing person, like, like how, like check out these books on yoga and meditation. And then they may say something completely far out, like, actually, like last night I had a dream about a green lizard and a dinosaur. And then what are you supposed to say to that? Like, you ever heard of stress? It's like when you say that, like you had a dream about a green lizard. Well, there's a story about King Nigga. He became a lizard. Like if you look at these books, you're going to become a lizard. And then like whatever. So it's like you're inspired in that way spontaneously. So so that's like, so that's how it goes. I mean, we like execute devotional service. I mean, we speak like all these things, but then like practically it manifests in our life like on different ways or whatever. Then what, we may be like at the temple and then we see something like, oh, that would be like very nice. Like if we had this here for Krishna or the spiritual master or whatever, or like we should paint it this way or that way, or like we have devotees making videos and then they're inspired in ways like do a shot like this, do a shot like that, or let's do a video like this or that. So there's like, we're all like inspired in different ways to like serve Krishna. And then like, that's utilization of our free will, serve Krishna or serve Maya. And so Krishna helps us. And he also reciprocates. So we engage and then like we feel like reciprocation. And then like, yeah, I want to serve better or whatever, like that. So anyways, a couple of things. Thank you. So you're welcome. All righty. Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Srila Prabhupada ki.